Hi, this is Simon McCormack from Plexxi. I'm going to show you today our vSphere network pod expansion demo. The demo consists of four main elements. First of all, I'm going to show you how we can, from our factory fresh network switch, do a zero touch configuration for the network elements. I'm going to show you how we can expand Plexxi network environment with a simple cable move and zero configuration again. I'm then going to show you some of the configuration we derived from vCenter, so I'm going to show you some of our vCenter integration. And then finally I'm going to do some vMotions in vCenter across a congested fabric, and I'm going to show how Plexxi Connect can pick that up and actually reroute traffic around the congestion. Start off, I'm going to show you as you see on my screen here, I have Plexxi Control and vCenter split screen. Plexxi Control knows nothing about the network environment because the switches are still in an unconfigured state. vCenter has got a couple of ESX servers, Barney and Fred, and there's a bunch of VMs on them. I've essentially pre-configured the management layer, but the network layer is unprovisioned. To start off, I'm going to bootstrap it by just connecting the physical connection in the Plexxi switch. So I'm going to show you our pods first, and then I'll do the connection. You'll see that we have two pods, pod A on the right hand side and pod B on the left hand side. Pod A has a couple of Plexxi switches, unconfigured, and also a couple of ESX servers, which is Fred and Barney. In pod B, a couple more Plexxi switches and another ESX server. And we'll get into those ones in a little while. First thing I'm going to do, as you'll see, I'm going to plug in the Ethernet cable for one of the switches, which is the bootstrap for our environment, to start configuring the network and bring it all up. Now we've connected the network layer, let's go back to our Plexxi control view to see what's happening. It takes a little while for Plexxi to gather the information on the switches, and we'll see that being dynamically drawn as we wait. What happens is essentially the IP address of control is configured on one of the switches. The switches then share that address between them and automatically connect to control, which starts to build a topology of the switches. Even now, if we zoom to our visualizer view, you'll see it's started to gather information. It's recognized as there's a couple of switches. It hasn't built the cabling between them yet. There's an exclamation mark on one of them doesn't have a power supply, so it's actually nothing to worry about. In a few seconds it's going to have built the cabling topology, and we'll be able to then zoom in to see what it's built. You'll see it's actually built the cabling topology and the alarm is cleared. We can zoom in further to look at peering links, and you'll see it's actually created a bunch of links between the switches, which basically is each of those is unidirectional Ethernet connections. This gets more interesting when I expand the pods. You'll see a lot of activity on the bottom as well, where there's jobs being run. This is Plexxi Connect in action, running and configuring the network for us. You'll see some of the jobs are talking about VLAN groups. It's actually configuring VLAN groups on Plexxi. If I zoom into switches now, we'll find that appropriate port VLAN configurations have been done. Where does it get that from, you might ask? Actually, it's getting a lot of this from vCenter. So in the vCenter configuration, we will look at either of these hosts, ESX hosts, Fred or Barney, and we look at the vSwitch configuration, you'll see it's actually configured to be on VLAN 100. Plexxi Connect supports both distributed or standard virtual switches. In this case, it's a standard virtual switch. We've derived the VLAN information, so if I go into configuration on Plexxi, I can now see assignments for VLANs, pod A1, VLAN groups. It tells me it's actually configured VLAN 100 on port 1 on this particular Plexxi switch. So it derived the port numbering itself. It's actually configured VLAN 2 as well, which is for a VLAN we've provisioned for traffic across the environment. So the network is up and running, and we can start to move things around now. Before I go too far, I want to actually expand the pods, because it gets much more interesting when we've got a bigger view expanded to be able to see what's going on. So now you'll see I'm going to go to the switches again. You'll see I'm live in front of the switches, and I'm going to expand it by moving the Plexxi light rail cable. So in a normal expansion of networking, there can be a lot of cable moves, a lot of complex networking equipment that needs to be in place to be able to expand the size of your network. With Plexxi, you can actually do it with, for redundancy, 2 cables. So I can actually stretch this cable from the first pod to the second pod and this cable back. So you'll see now I've basically connected it together, and there's basically 4 switches that will come through in Plexxi control. Now if we go back to our dashboard on Plexxi, we should start to see some activity. New things appearing. Yes, we see a 3rd switch has appeared. Let's go to our visualizer view now, because it's interesting to see as it built it. Actually, it was a little bit too quick for me. I was hoping to show you as it built the cables, but actually it built them quick enough, too fast for the demo. So it discovers this environment very quickly. Let's look at the peering links now. If you remember what that was like previously, it was just a bunch of connections between 2 switches. If I go to my peering links now, actually we've expanded it. So just by swapping those 2 cables, we've actually expanded our network capacity quite a lot of extra capacity. Not only this, Plexxi Connect is still running, and you'll see work happening below, lots of jobs going. Plexxi Connect has detected the new switches, and it started to configure the new network. So I've not only expanded this network using the 0 configuration, I'm now configuring the new network as well. So actually I don't need to touch the new network to get it configured. We've actually done an extra little thing here as well. Is actually Plexxi Connect has information on the ESX server in pod B. So normally in vCenter you've got to go to vCenter and tell vCenter about a new ESX server. So if I go to vCenter and just refresh this view now, we'll see actually Wilma has appeared. That was Plexxi Connect plumbing that into vCenter. So actually in this pod not only does network configuration, but configures the environment, virtualization environment as well. Now let's do some fun things. First of all, we want to do, let's turn on traffic profiling, and we'll see that actually there's some traffic running on this. If you look back to when I was on the switches, there was a yellow cable between pod A1 and A2, and that's aspirant generating traffic. So we want to congest the traffic, show you there's a lot of traffic going across, and then I want to do some vMotions. Actually, you can see in this view, it's yellow, which means it's kind of congested and not fully. There's a lot of capacity between Plexxi switches, and what I want to do is actually reduce the capacity on the Plexxi just so I can congest it. So I'm actually going to reduce it to 1 and then congest it with traffic, and then I'm going to try the vMotion. So bear with me while I tweak the fitting parameters so I can traffic engineer the network. And just give it 1 everywhere, so there's going to be 1 connection. And then I'll refresh the view and we should see the links going very red. Then I'm going to try the vMotion and we're going to fail it. So if I go to my PFAT view, active links only, because we're only interested in what active. So those other links that you saw previously, they're still there, but essentially think of them, they've gone dark now. They're like dark fiber, they're dark, they're waiting for traffic for Plexxi control to provision. So between A1 and A2 now it's going pretty red and it's very well congested. So if I do a vMotion now, we want it to fail. Actually, before I can do the vMotion, I actually need to stop Plexxi Connect. So I'm going to stop Plexxi Connect. I'll do that in the background. And that will basically stop Plexxi Connect from fixing the problem. So I stopped Plexxi Connect. So I'm going to do a vMotion now. We'll grab one of Fred's VMs. Let's go to Fred. And we want to go test VM2. He is on Fred. Yeah. I'm going to move him to Barney, which is across that congested path. So this is, if you're familiar with vMotions, it generates quite a lot of traffic. Lots and lots of packets go back and forth between the hosts when you're doing a vMotion. So I'm just going to select most of the default options, make it go to Barney, and next through it. This is also it's actually using storage on the local disk, not shared storage. It doesn't make that much difference. You could do it either way. And so it's now doing a live migration. And from the vMotion percentages, we know 25% means it's prepared and ready to transport across the network. Anything more than 29% means it's actually sending data across the network. In this case, because this path is so red and congested, it's not getting anything through. In fact, we're pumping 30 gig through this pipe, and I guess it's dropping a lot of it. So this vMotion is just going to fail. Let me cancel it. Or why don't we just wait and watch it fail? Talk amongst yourselves while we're doing this. So now you see it's failed, and I can start Plexxi vCenter again, which is Plexxi Connect, restart Plexxi Connect, wait for a second for it to come up. We'll see some activity in the Plexxi view, Plexxi job view, so I know it's woken up and starting to do stuff and ready for the vMotion. And we're just going to try that vMotion again. Yeah, so you see activity in the bottom left-hand screen. That's Plexxi Connected started up again, and it's just checking everything. Everything's good. Enabling switch ports, actually it's checking each switch port. If they're not up, it brings them up. They're all up. Now we go back to test VM2, and we just go migrate again. VMware will nicely be ready for us to do it and just say, finish means try again. So now it's going to try again. I'm going to see activity on the bottom left-hand side again. This is Plexxi Connect picking up the vMotion. So it recognizes the vMotion by monitoring events on vCenter. It's then built a dynamic path for it. That dynamic path is going around the congestion. If I look at my affinities view, I'll show you the affinity that we created for it. So this has been created on demand. It's recognized the VM kernel adapters attached to Fred and Barney. It knows the ones that are enabled for vMotion, because it goes from the MAC addresses of those systems, and now it's sending the data across that path. If we go to a different view, we'll see our FSAT view. This is the path is actually created for it. And if you follow the utilization on the right hand side, set at 38%, actually it's already completed. If I refresh vCenter, you'll see that it's actually done, completed. So the vMotion worked. Now I also want to show you that because we've gathered data from vCenter, we've actually built a little model within inside Plexxi Control of the virtualized environment, how it looks in the network. So let's look to our network view. You see we've got the 4 Plexxi switches that we've discovered, but also now I've got what's connected to those Plexxi switches. That's what this view is about, what's connected to Plexxi. The visualizer view is the internals of how Plexxi connects to each other. These little stacks here are vhosts, the stack of 1 in this case, I can zoom into. So if I look at plot A1 stack, view the details, I can see this is actually where Fred is. Within Fred, I can see the virtual machines that he has. So actually all the virtual machines, the network adapters, and all the network level type information has been gathered. This is really powerful for troubleshooting. You imagine you've got one of your users, you've got a virtual machine, they don't know if it's talking, they don't know where the host is. We've gathered all this different information dynamically, and this is a live view. So if I turn one of these off, then it'll disappear from the view, we don't know where it is anymore. We'll know where the last time we saw it, but we don't know that it's live anymore. So this is a great tool for troubleshooting in your environment. So in summary, what I've told you is we have been able to zero-touch configure a network. You never saw me type a single command. I never went to a single GUI screen and configured a single thing in this entire environment. It was 100% automated. We derived information from vCenter to be able to configure some of this data, but basically it was zero-touch configuration. We expanded the network with a simple cable move. You think in a traditional network environment, to expand the capacity of your network often involves multiple networks and many, many cables. In this Plexxi environment, it was actually 2 cables that gave us expansion of the network and redundancy. Thirdly, we showed you we're actually deriving a lot of data from vCenter. So as your operations people use vCenter, we can basically configure network based on that information if required by your environment. And finally, we showed you that we have a great vMotion use case where you can fail vMotions if you have congestion in the environment. And VMware doesn't really know what's going on in this environment. It's very difficult to troubleshoot. Actually, with Plexxi, we can recognize it by plumbing into the APIs and fix the problem before you ever see anything in your environment. And that concludes the demo for the Plexxi vSphere Network Pod Expansion demo.